Hi everyone, welcome back to the Imperium Goddess Diaries. So I've decided to name it the Imperium Goddess Diaries, but you can already see that. But when I made the first two episodes, I hadn't decided on the full name of my channel. So here it is. It is literally a diary of the things that I've gone through and things that I've experienced, and hopefully that my experiences can help anyone else as well. Or give advice, or just enjoy it. Like, I don't know. I think I'm funny, so just enjoy. Basically, this episode is about like how difficult it is to become vulnerable when you're not really a vulnerable person. So for me, it was quite hard. And I think like in the process of becoming vulnerable, I had to then become really honest with myself, and that in itself is a whole journey, and you just keep evolving and just going down the rabbit hole, and all of a sudden you just got inception of journeys that you just need to unfold about yourself. But I guess it's just part of the fun. Anyway, so for me, I think it was, I've always, before and pre-spiritual awakening and still now, I've maintained a level of strength within myself, a level of like, really like I was solid kind of person. Like I wasn't flittery with my emotions, apart from like anger, because that's the emotion that I chose to kind of handle the best. I used to think that crying and venting or opening up about your emotions was weakness, and I think that also can come down to like a lot of the time in the past. For me, I've been the strong one of my friends, and I've loved that title, and I've held that title quite strong. But unfortunately, you know, when you are going through your awakening and ascension process, you need to face these things. And in order for you to be able to grow, you're going to have to come vulnerable, which is something that I just was like, oh my God, like I can't, this is not a thing. Well, it is a thing, and it's an ugly thing. And it's just not that nice to be faced with the fact that like you've been kind of also ignoring yourself for a long time. For me, I was putting a lot of my emotions in the back burner, my feelings about things, because I was like, okay, like I'd rather like smooth things out with other people, or, you know, kind of have that situation sorted without me actually just considering, hey, like how is this going to affect me? And then so it would leave me exhausted, and then later on you'd have an outburst of something. You don't know where it came from, but it would just kind of happen. So in the depths of my, what's it called? Dark night of the soul section of my awakening, which happened a few times, like that section. So let's not forget that there's multiple dark night of the souls. But I had to realize that, like, okay, in order for me to ever grow and ever see outside of what's happening, because I'm only looking inside the box at the moment, and like I'm not moving anywhere. Like I need to figure this out. Oh my God, my dog's barking. I need to figure this out. So then I started doing the whole thing of, you know, like started trying to write things down, started to try and acknowledge things. I started trying to talk about it with, you know, with friends. But I was a little bit toxic about it, because I spoke about it, but I still didn't acknowledge that it was me. Like I still refused to believe that that was me. I refused to believe that that part of me existed, and that vulnerability existed. And like, what the fuck is that? Like, like I look back now and I'm like, why was I doing that? But I just guess at the time I didn't know, and I didn't. But that was just part of the journey that I have, and I will speak about this a lot, that I have chosen for myself. I've chosen the challenges, and I've chosen the people, and I've chosen the ups and downs. So this is one of them. And it was, you know, and I've said in other episodes that my ego was a lot of the biggest ruler of my life. Like, you know, she just took over, and look, you know, she's a boss bitch. Like she gets what she wants, but sometimes she doesn't do it in the best way. And I think, you know, when my higher self started really coming out and saying, hey, like, Louisa, you have a little bit of work to do. And it was me, like in the middle. I feel like it's like, you know, you two parents fighting, and then just you. And then she was like, no, like, Louisa, you have work to do. The ego was like, no, I don't. And so it was a battle. And I hope that I can relate with people on this, because sometimes it is really, really frustrating when you're battling multiple multiple versions of you in your head to try and work out what's the actual best road for you. So there's that. And then there's the part where say that you're trying to push yourself into a situation where you've just never been before. You're not really going to know where it is, and you're not going to know what territory it is. So for me, trying to make myself vulnerable and a lot less, closed off, or like a lot less strong per se, I had to try and work out what kind of vulnerable meant. I've said before, you read the books, you watch the videos, you listen to the podcast, but really trying to do something or go somewhere that you've never been before is literally like a sim walking up against a wall constantly. They walk like this up against a wall and they just don't go anywhere. So you're walking yourself up against the wall, you're not going anywhere. And that's literally how I look at it. And it's not until you create the door for that sim that they can go into the next room or leave that room. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? I feel like I thought this analogy today and I laughed because Sims are really funny when they're like, anyway. So now when you do create that door and you do walk into the unknown, what does that actually look like for you? And that little room, let's use the room as an analogy. Let's keep this visual. Okay, imagine you haven't been to that room before, that room of vulnerability, or you visited it a couple of times and you quickly leave. It's like you dump and run. It's like a dumping room. It's like the attic, or does it look like one of those sort of hoarding people's houses, like where they hoard a whole heap of shit? Does it look like that? Basically, if you haven't been there before, if you haven't opened up that part, is the room going to be dusty? Is it going to be full of shit? Does it need cleaning? Is it going to be ugly? Yeah, it's probably going to be all those things and more. Is it going to take time to clean? Yes. Is it going to be uncomfortable to clean it? Yes. And I guess you can link that back to how you're going to help yourself grow, is that you just get into the thick of it, roll your sleeves up and do the work. And sometimes maybe you might not know how to clean something like that, or you might not know how to work on something like that, but you're just going to have to try. And you can get as much guidance as you can, but you're not going to learn unless you can really go in and just do it yourself, basically. So in saying that, vulnerability can open you up, and you're like, okay, I'm seeing where I can go. I'm seeing, okay, this could be safe. This could potentially be safe for me, and I can start to grow with this. But then what I also noticed in myself is that I found it very easy to neglect that again. And it happens over and over. Like, you can easily neglect the room and it gets messy all over again. And then you have to go back and do the work again. So just like anything, you have to keep it maintained, and you have to keep it clean, and you have to take care of it. Your vulnerability is a very, very special part of you, and no one can take that away from you, because your vulnerability is your authenticity as well. And I love the idea of authenticity, and I love everything about it, because what the main thing is for me is that no one will ever take your authenticity away from you, and your integrity, because that's just you. That's you in an absolute nutshell, and nobody can question that, because no one can question you, in your integrity and authentically who you are. So just remember that. And if anyone ever tries to, notice how that feels for you, because it's so. In those moments, I started to realize that, why is it that I hold space for everybody else and their vulnerability without judgment, but I don't do it for me? And I was like, holy fuck, I've been literally nurturing other people when they're going through pain, there for them every step of the way, but why am I not doing it for me? And why wouldn't people hold space for me? Because they would hold space for me. And the really beautiful people in your life will always hold space for you. excuse me. So it came to, I did a hypnotherapy session. It was about something not related, but this moment took me right back into probably the reason why that I don't open up. And it was because I was always felt guilty if I say burdened my mum. Now my mum is a single mum. She was the best mum, like so beautiful, raised 2 children we were very young. And all I wanted to do was just try and make her life easier. I would never want to make her life any more difficult. So I just would hold things in because I just feel like, I could just do it myself because mum, she's a hardworking woman and she supports us kids, and I just want her just to have less stress. And she would try and draw things out of me like, Louise, is there anything you want to talk about? I'm like, no, like I'm fine. And I consciously did this because I was really empathic from a very, very young age. I vividly remember it being at 6 years old, 5 or 6 years old. I remember when my dad left and thinking, fuck, like my mum's by herself now, and it's me and my brother, and he was 2. He was really little. And I just like, okay, like I want to make her life easier. And I remember that at 6 years old. So imagine being that much of an empath your whole life. It's exhausting, but I'd never change it. It's the best. So that's where that came from. And all I wanted was just for it to be easier for her. So I never wanted to burden her. So that I always, in my old life, just didn't want to burden anybody else because I'd rather be there for others than be there for me. And then later on, you realize that that's just not really that sustainable. And you kind of do need to talk about your feelings. And you do need to acknowledge that sometimes when you're not feeling okay, people will hold space for you. And people want to hold space for you. There's people in your life that will want to help you. And if there isn't people in your life that want to help you, then somebody will. There's always someone if within either a therapist or some sort of counselor or some sort of, I find that this is very interesting. I find that when you're in this community, you attract some of the most wonderful people in the strangest ways. But sometimes they're the perfect person that you need for at the time that you're feeling something. And I know this because I've met someone who's obviously in the spiritual community. We've attracted each other little two moths to a flame together. Like, oh my God, I had a feeling that you were like this. Oh my God, same. That sort of conversation. And you start talking, and then you mention something that maybe that you're going through, and they give you the exact perfect advice, or you give them the exact thing that they need to hear. You might never see that person again, but there's something in that the universe goes, you're going to learn from this person in this moment, and it's going to be exactly what you need, and you're going to depart, and you're never going to forget it. So, like I said before, becoming vulnerable isn't easy, but when you do become a lot more vulnerable, your doors open up a little bit, actually a lot. Me, it was a little bit because I only needed little bits of time. I would creak the door open a little bit, oh, it's scary. No, I did. I really did. And it's quite remarkable what you can achieve when you are vulnerable, and also how much quicker you can get through situations because you're honest with yourself. And that's all the same. Vulnerability is honesty, and that's honesty to you, and you're a credit to yourself if you're honest with yourself. So I hope that everyone gets, I hope that people get something out of that, but they also want to realize that it is a personal journey. But then also I want to know if anyone else has any other ways that they've foregone their issues with vulnerability, or they've overcome the stigma that they've had within themselves, or maybe the stigma that someone else has created for them. So let me know in the comments, and I'll talk to you guys next time.